Welcome back to part 38 of Death End Request 2, where today, well, we're continuing the pain area, but I thought to mix it up by changing to Rottie as our field character, since we didn't do it once in the entire adventure. Which also means any fight that the fight ends with her dead, I have to reset her as the party leader afterwards. But starting with the second floor is when you start getting a bit of the bullshit. As you noticed immediately, the fight started, and look at Liliana's health, she started at full. The game is generous enough with the glitch spots where most fights there will be at least one invincibility spot. And the reason why they try and give you at least one is because then if you're using the base 3, even if you have all their skills, all 3 of you will be able to be invincible, because Mai can make herself invincible through her ultimate. Liliana has a skill to do it, Rottie has nothing, so the glitch spots are just so you can save the whole team. It is a balancing thing. But that being said, as it's a continuation of the pain area, I'm just going to let the footage play for itself and only really start talking about it again if something significant happens, but be spending the rest of the time talking about other subjects. So that being said, I want to start with something rather small that is of a series I don't talk about that much despite holding it quite close to my heart, and it's just because I doubt I'll ever really let's play any games of the series, and that is to do with Halo. Today, the Master Chief Collection is getting the update for PC that will be adding Halo 4. And now, personally, as someone who's been playing it off the Xbox One, I'm not too fussed about that, like, on a personal level. Like, I mean, I'm happy for PC Halo fans, because as much as you can say what you want about Halo 4's campaign, I think the multiplayer for Halo 4 really holds well. And for me personally, I think it controls the best in a lot of ways for what it did, so I always appreciate that that's going to be there. The main thing I want to talk about is that we're getting crossplay with today's update, and I'm super stoked for that. I'm hopeful that at some point I can do at least 1 or 2 streams with Callum and maybe a couple others as we go, to just, yeah, I think the Raging Calzone, for those of you who are recently joining me, is a friend of mine who I sometimes do videos with, usually first person shooters, because he lives off them, so it's the best place to go to get him involved. If it's not that, it's a FromSoft game, but I don't always have time for that. But anyway, if he's been doing a lot more live streaming recently, and so maybe I'll pop up on a live stream of his at some point and we can play some Halo. And if I can learn how to do proper live streaming straight to YouTube through Xbox One, maybe I'll do it there too. But if I'm honest with you, I really don't like the Xbox One's built-in recording system at all. It feels very counterintuitive in a lot of ways. It feels like you have to jump through 10 hurdles to get a bit of footage recorded. So I'd rather just hold off for now. And also, yes, Rottie does have all her own lines for save points, treasures, asking Mai to use a computer, saying, hey, Liliana can handle this, saying, I can handle this. Like, she has all her field lines. But crossplay, I am super excited for, because I've been eager for it since they first said they were working on it. Almost the very, day it came out on PC, they were like, look, we're going to work on it and we'll let you know. Yeah, it's not perfect yet, and they said they're going to keep on working on pieces of it, so I'm like, okay, sure. Because right now you can do everything but the campaign. And to be honest, the campaign was kind of what I was looking forward to. But I'm super excited for crossplay for custom games as well, because I've got a huge backlog of Halo 3 and Reach custom games that we can mess around with. Also, 1 or 2 Halo anniversaries, but I'm not too big on it, so I'm not too fussed. I lived on Reach as a kid, so of course I have loads of Reach. I got my 360. Keep in mind, when I was young, we weren't the sort of family that would just be able to buy a new console like that. We had to wait a good while. And so I was still on the PlayStation 2, and it's why I speak so highly of it, up until Christmas 2011. And I got it with Reach. And Reach is still the game I had the most hours in by a country mile. I lived off that game on the 360 era. Which says a lot compared to how much of the 360 era I played, because as I've also not been too subtle about, I, as a whole, didn't really like that generation. I felt that the generation as a whole was kind of weak, because all the games I loved didn't really get any or many follow-ups. Or if they did, something was missing, like Dead Rising 3. But I say that came out more burning into the start of the PS4 and Xbox One gen, so I can't really pull on that one too much. But there was a lot of missteps it felt like the generation as a whole took, and I struggled to enjoy it, and it made me very hesitant to come to the PS4 afterwards. It was only just because a lot of Japanese games I liked were on it that I made the jump. But it ended up working out because this generation has been a second coming of my childhood, and I love it. And there's been a lot of really fresh, enjoyable games as well, like what we're playing. But yeah, we've got all that sorted. So we've got custom games, we've got multiplayer, you can do Forge, and there's something kind of fun about building maps with mates. Even if it's really dumb shit, there's something just really fun about firing up good old Forge World and just firing around and having a laugh. Well, I look forward to it. I've got a sneaking suspicion load times will increase now crossplay is active, because they will compensate for us Xbox Oneers. Which, to be fair, the Xbox One load screens have never been bad on Halo MCC. Like, it's never been really bad. Maybe it's just because I have a later model Xbox One, so it can handle it a bit better. But it's never been like real bad for me. But I can imagine if they're doing crossplay, they'll want to be able to make it like have grace period for every single platform, so it'll be a bit slower. But we'll see. Because it's going to be like Callum and a couple friends loading in first, and then me on Xbox One like, hold on guys! Also, this situation here going on right now, it's me desperately trying to, that's going to sound horrible, desperately trying to get Rottie killed because I want to get the invincibility skill for Liliana, and the only way to get it is to use Alice Revive. And so I need a teammate to die so I can revive them to get it. I don't think you actually need to use the skill, you just need to trigger it, but I wasn't about to take that chance, so I was just like, look, take her out. No, don't take Liliana with her, god damn it! And I end up putting myself in a bit of a risky situation here because of it. And you see, I debate for a while what I'm going to do to deal with this. I mentioned, like, look, if I just buff defenses and... I probably should have picked up another blue because my elixir is going to run out. Pick up another blue, pass Rob. Come on. Oh, what am I thinking? I wonder what I'm thinking. I recorded this a little while ago. Oh, okay, and a safety heal. Am I not going to touch that other... Ah, well, I lost that glitch form. That was a dumb mistake. Oh, it missed. Oh, I didn't miss that one. Look at how much damage! Liana, come on! This is why I desperately wanted to get the invincibility skill for her. Like, I safety glitch her just so she has the higher defense. But Alice Revive. Fist Light. And then a heal. I don't know if it has to be the highest one, but it's what I go with. And you should... Yeah, there it is. Aegis Absorb. She can now make herself invincible. Worth mentioning that any skill drop isn't 100% guaranteed. So if you're following along and you do that and you don't get it, just keep trying. The worst that could be is that you might just be slightly underleveled, because you do have to hit certain level thresholds to get some skills. But if going back to Halo, if they do in time, which I'm pretty sure they will from how they've worded the blog post saying they're still working on things, if they do add campaign crossplay, I think it's about time I tackle a lasso playthrough. I don't know when, don't know how, and I don't know who I'll get on board, but I definitely want to do a lasso playthrough at some point. I think that'd just be a real fun thing to do. It might be frustrating, especially if there's really wide differences in skill levels between everyone who participates. But I think that could be a lot of fun to get going. But that will be a discussion for later, because God knows when that will be. And it's also a small part of it, me missing the lasso runs that Achievement Hunter did. I think they're waiting for Halo 4's PC release as well, because they said they were going to do Halo 4 next. And the fact that it's been a while since their ODST run. Oh, also, this is where I take the opportunity. I almost never use favourites, but at this point, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a favourites list. So I give everyone a favourites list, since they've pretty much got all the skills I want for them, so I can just make a comprehensive list of all the skills I care about. I don't have every single skill for Liliana. I think she's still missing one, but it's not one you particularly need. So for as far as I'm concerned, I've got every skill I care about. Ooh, new curse ball, because yay. if you want to speed through this area a bit quicker, there's nothing stopping you from getting curse balls that are for optional areas and then not using them. So you've got a whole bunch of extras because it's a universal key, so you don't need to worry about what door it's used for. You can use it on whatever you want to just cut out parts of the pain area to get it moving.
I'll use this.
Just be careful overusing them, because you might end up putting yourself in a situation in the plot where you need to come back to the pain area to pick up its curse balls, and that would just not be fun. Something that is quite fun though is that some of the enemies here will actually run away, and this does continue all the way to the end of the 5th floor. You will occasionally get an enemy that will just book it, and with how much of a grind the pain area is, being able to put that to one side is always appreciated. So personally, I would say just prioritize targeting the enemies that won't run away. Like, for now, because it's early on and I haven't lost patience yet, I don't mind attacking them because it's extra experience, because I want to try and get them to get the whole party to level 99 as quick as I can. But you really don't have to worry about it yourself.
Rottie, why do you speak politely in front of the maid?
But I'm curious to see how many videos this be. Like, in an ideal world, it'll be like the first game where it's 5 videos for each floor. But even in the first game, I cut it close because I think that last video was like 55 minutes. And this one, like that one, the last floor has 2 boss fights at the end, and the fights are insanely long. And so it might end up being 6 videos, which if that's the case, is no harm, no foul. I'll work something out. Especially because there's going to be a lot... Oh, there's another one running away. Especially because there's going to be a lot more bonus episodes for this game than there was the last one. Because the last one, it was just alternate endings, pain area, your reward for the pain area, goodbye. And that was literally it. But, well, firstly, in this game, you don't really get a reward for defeating the pain area. At least not one that's worth it. Which, to be fair, the first game's reward wasn't really worth it anyway, but it was more of a reward. But in this game, you really don't get much for your trouble. So... I won't have that much to talk about, but obviously, as I've said before, I'm doing the 1.5 run as well, where I'll be talking about that book and I'll be doing a live reading of it. It's worth mentioning that when I do that live reading, the book is structured like the dialogue in the game. So there may be points where if you're reading it yourself and you're just starting on it, you might be like, well, hang on a minute, who's talking? Like, I've made sure to read it a few times myself to get an idea of who, what, when, where, and why. But it is structured weirdly. It's not a big book either. Like, I should be able to knock it out in one video. I think it's literally, if I just quickly get it. Yeah, it's a prologue, 4 chapters, and then extra chapter. Extra chapter is not long. Extra chapter is more just having fun at the end, just to kind of cheer it up a little bit. Because it's pretty dark as a whole, because, you know, this whole game's dark as a whole. Oh, I mean, it's only 48 pages. We should do alright. And I would talk about the actual art book that came to Collector's Edition as well, but unless I'm going to whip out a camera and record it that way, like, nah, you can look it up yourself. Also, I don't know how, Idea Factory International would feel about me being like, hey, look at everything that's in this collector's edition book, because like otherwise it kind of loses the point of getting it if you can just check it yourself. I don't know how they feel about that. I assume they're alright because they're extremely chill about a lot of things, but still, I don't want to harm the relationship I've built up with that company over the past couple of years. I say that, I doubt they know who I am. I just buy all their games. but they have a tendency of delivering them to me early, and I appreciate that, even if it's almost definitely accidental. Eventually you're going to also see me set up... Actually, I say that, I don't know if that's in this one or the next video, but eventually you're going to see me set up an auto command, because you know there is the auto attack, the thing that I've used almost never in this entire journey, where you just hit circle. I set up one for Liliana where it's buff her speed, half everyone's damage, and then make herself invincible. Just because it becomes such a standard in the later floors that instead of having to set it up each time, I'm just like, I'd rather hit circle and go. Like, I have a similar one as well that I'll set up for but I haven't done it yet, where it'll be Rovid Bull and then 2 attacks, just so I don't have to keep on doing that as well. And I'm not sure what I'll set up for Rottie. Like, it'll probably be something with a magic boost in attack, but I don't know. I might not worry about Rottie, because Rottie's so much of an all-rounder, even if she's not as physically strong as Mai. But I do my obligatory camp touch just so I can get my free restore and save. You're going to see a lot more cuts in this one compared to the first one, because I got interrupted a lot trying to record this video the other day. And it happens. I'm not losing sleep over it. It sometimes just happens where I get interrupted in recording, so I have to do a lot of little cuts, so there's not a lot of me standing around. But we're 15 minutes into this 41-minute video, and I'm already struggling with what to talk about, because unlike last year, when I was talking about Death End 1's pain area, when we had like the Sony presentation, the Tokyo game show, we had the awards shows, we had what to expect from Game Awards, we had so many subjects to talk about, all of that shit's not happening. And to be honest, I say that, we don't know for sure if Game Awards isn't happening. I'm just like 99% confident it's not happening. I'd be very surprised if it is. Especially because they're already not doing too well, because last year's Game Awards was boring as fuck. And it was already on the hot fire, a lot of hot fire, because the awards, the games that were nominated to go into Game of the Year was a very questionable list. And it's because it's decided almost entirely by journalists, and journalists are notorious for the games they hate and letting that skew their bias. And it's why Fire Emblem Three Houses and Devil May Cry 5 both just didn't show up on that list, despite the fact literally everyone and their mother was like, yeah, no, they should have been there. They should have been nominated. Who should win? That's always up to argument, but they absolutely should have been on that list. Control should not have been on that list. Control is a good game, and it's got a great story, I will take it that, but Game of the Year material, especially versus some of the other games that are on that list, no, not even close. It's a good game, it's not a great game. And a lot of people felt that way. So yeah, it is good, and it did help it with it, like, boost its notoriety, because some people just hadn't heard of it. So we were like, Control, okay. They checked it out and enjoyed it, and I'm happy for the company that happened. But as a whole, it wasn't that good. It was a strong 7 out of 10. It wasn't Game of the Year material. And I've mentioned it before, and if you're a Devil May Cry fan, you know what I'm about to tell you. But it is no secret that journalists as a whole have an extreme hatred towards the original Devil May Cry series. And it's entirely because we stopped them from getting control of the Japanese market. Which you're sitting there going, well, hang on a minute, that's a jump. How come they don't... No, it's a long-ass story, but it is true. At the time, back in 2012, 2013, it was kind of well known that journalists, and they still do have that power, even if they're pulled into question a lot more often nowadays than they used to be. It was kind of known that they kind of controlled what people played. Through their reviews, through their journalism, they directly could influence what people played, and they did it all the time. And they loved the fact that they had a great amount of control over the US because of it. That they could tell them, you play this, you shouldn't play this. If there was a game company they didn't like, they could just take it over basically and dismantle it and ruin the company, which they did many times. I'm not about to go into the detail on that one, because there's a long ass track record of how many companies they single-handedly destroyed just because they didn't like them. They wanted to get influence over the Japanese market as well, like they did the US market at the time. When Capcom, a Japanese company, was reaching out to Western parties to make games, they desperately wanted to use that as an opportunity to make out that the Western-made games were better than their Japanese original, solely so then the Japanese audience, or the Japanese developers, would cave more into the Western side, you know, their home turf that they already had influence over, to take more control of the Japanese market as well. Well, it infamously backfired, because their biggest target that they tried to flip round was the Devil May Cry reboot. And the evidence of this is still apparent to this very day. Every single time they ever talk about Devil May Cry, they try and bring up the reboot and pretend it's something worth talking about, when in reality the game is an utter disgrace and a blatant insult to anyone who's ever cared about the franchise. Gameplay wise, it's a perfectly fine game, but its story, its characters, its narrative, and the entire message of the game was deliberately attacking the original fan base, and so the game sold hideously and was universally panned by anyone who has a brain. It was only journalists that tried to make out it was something worth playing and it was good. They tried to make out it was one of the best things ever and far better than anything the original series had ever pulled off. But this heavy backfiring and this heavy aggression completely went against their evil plan, because basically that's what it is, they're super villains at this point. No, And then I'm just kidding, they're just not nice people. But because they didn't get their influence, it backfired so heavily that it not only told Capcom, but almost every Japanese company that was watching it, that the US journalists couldn't be trusted. And they have never let that grudge of that punishment for their own greed go. Throughout the entirety of DMC5's development, they were trying to say, don't forget about the reboot. When it came out, they tried to slag it off and try and throw it under the bus and said it's not that good. And then come Game Awards, the Game Awards was decided by journalists. Everyone went winning the bet DMC5 won't be on there, despite the fact they got 10 out of 10s across the board and was loved by anyone with a brain. No, what a surprise, it wasn't on there. And that just, as an extension, put a big puncture into the Game Awards. And I get it, like Jeff Keighley, he wasn't going to know all those sort of details. He's got to worry about so much more. He's not going to know what's going on precisely with the DMC industry. Even when people were telling him, but I get that he's a busy man, so what are you going to do? But the damage was present. And the Game Awards show as a whole wasn't even that great. It was the most advertised Field 1 in a while. It had a good strong start, but they decided to be extremely tone deaf by... I nearly tank a game over here. They decided to have it be so tone deaf by trying to end the show. You know, the ultimate send-off is a licensed game. Something that ends up being, you know, inevitably a horrible cashed-in licensed game that further cemented the problem of people outside the gaming industry not only don't understand the gaming industry, they don't care to. And also the minor point that I like bringing up of don't hire physical actors to do voice acting because they won't do a good performance. Because there's a very different training you do for voice acting, because you have to carry an entire character with just your voice alone. There is no physical action to do it. It's far harder for voice actors because they have to do just their voice. Physical actors have their bodies to work with, which yes comes with physical strain, but just having physical actors from Hollywood voice characters, they sounded terrible. Not a single person in the Fast and Furious games sounded even remotely decent as a voice actor. They were all boring as crap with no effort put into their voices. They were just mumbling along. It's like you should never do it. Always get a professional voice actor to do it, not just, oh, they're a celebrity face. Because remember the glitch bot from Destiny? Remember when Keith Sutherland did Snake in MGS5? Exactly. They weren't great. They're good actors, and no one's ever going to take them away from them. But they were not good voice actors, even slightly. They were very mumbly and very boring. And then they decided to end the show with that, and I was like, that's such a slap in the face to everything you're trying to celebrate. And so I even if the Game Awards does happen, I'm really not expecting much. And all people are like, oh, it shouldn't be about the Game Awards, it's about the rewards. Okay, then what fucking awards? They did half of them in the pre-show, and they didn't even do any kind of celebration. They just put up a piece of paper and went, so the reward for this one goes to... and really undercut most of the awards. Which is more frustrating as well for some people, because it was like, best music soundtrack, best composition, best music artist for the game, was something that was done in a cutaway, throwaway pre-show. It's like, hang on a minute. Something that, if you've been in the industry a while, you'll know about is that the music side of it is really underappreciated. That was a perfect opportunity that they had to escalate it and make you bring it to the forefront, and they just threw it under the bus. Fucking Game Awards. And then if you say, oh well, the awards aren't everything, then what announcements did we make? Other than, well, I said the Xbox Series X got its first debut announcement, which is kind of cool, but that was kind of it. There really wasn't much else that really sold the show. But I've ranted on enough. I don't like ranting in videos. As much as I do it kind of often when it's a subject I care about, I don't like doing it. I love talking about video games, but there's so many holes in the industry still present today that I feel like needs to constantly be brought to the spotlight that can just be better. Other than the obvious, like, because anyone could tell you that EA only want your money, and EA will happily put gambling in games intended for children, knowing that they will be able to rinse children out of their parents' bank accounts and get them a gambling addiction just to suit their pockets. Something that is illegal, the law just hasn't caught up yet. Because it's still gambling the minors, the law just hasn't realised that gambling happens in video games yet. And as soon as it does... But I don't have to tell you that, because it's the most obvious news on the planet. Anyone could tell you that they are the scum of the earth that have been doing this monstrous stuff for years. Like, anyone could tell you that Todd Howard is not the most respectable man at Bethesda, as much as he likes to pretend he is, and a lot of people still think he's good as gold. He isn't the best person around, and it's why a lot of his games more recently have been crumbling apart, because the illusion is breaking for a lot of people. After the Prey takeover, that hostile takeover, I've always been wary of the dude, and it's just only kind of declined ever since. Or Activision. Like, there's so many big stories, so I just try and steer away from it a little bit if I can, because it's like, you already know this stuff. So I'd rather talk about Death End more, because I can't think of anything else to talk about, and we're only like 25 minutes into this recording. This is the problem with the pain areas. It's gonna, as I said earlier, there's less to talk about, so it's gonna be more problematic. Like, at least on the later floors, I can point out when the fights that annoyed me, or something like that, but it's not like on the first game where I had so much to talk about. Like, this year's been a quiet year as a whole, other than the 7 remake, which I hope an update that gets rid of the share restrictions come around soon, because I can let's play it. And I say that with confidence, or some degree of confidence, because Square Enix have done that with every single one of their previous titles. Like, a year or so after its release, they've released a patch that got rid of all share restrictions. And I think they would, because I think what they'll do is they'll wait for next April, because it's a timed exclusive for PS4 for only a year. So in April that year will run out. So I'm expecting they'll release it to PC and probably make a PS5 port. Maybe an Xbox Series X port. I kind of hope so, just because it's a good game and I want more people to experience it. But I don't know what goes on in Square Enix's brain half the time. But when it does, I'm hoping that they will then release like a more overhaul patch then and there to just clean up some of the slight problems. Maybe add a photo mode, because I mean, come on, the game's beautiful, and get rid of the share restrictions. The moment I know for a fact share restrictions are gone, it's open season. I'll be shifting my attention to record that game. I say that it probably won't be straight away, because there's other things I want to do, but it's definitely high up on the list of games I want to do, especially going into next gen. Which, speaking of, I was going to talk about it more yesterday, but I can talk about it now properly. I have been exposed and looked into how recording is going to be on PS5, and to be honest, it shouldn't take me that long to adjust. When I eventually get my PS5, I'll probably take like a week to just kind of mess around a little bit, but then it should be business as usual. Because the PS5 has got Share Factory and it works identically to how it did in this. It just runs quicker. Maybe it'll be able to like process longer videos, which would be nice. I'm not going to lose sleep if it can't. If it still says keep it to 60 minutes, that's fine. The other plus side is that it will get a natural quality boost when I do it. We'll start being able to upload at 1080p and hopefully 60 frames. Because I know the PS4 Pro had a boost. Like, I think on the PS4 Pro, if you upload through that, you could get it at 1080p. But on my PS4 Slim, which is what I've always done my recording on, it's always 720p at 30, which is starting to show its age. Like, it still looks good in my opinion. Like, it doesn't look hideous, but there are some games that I really enjoy and I think look amazing and play smooth as silk that I didn't feel like I got to show off in the greatest light possible because they were only at 720-30 sort of thing. Because that will be a point that it's not going to be anytime soon. I'm in no rush, but at some point in the future there are a couple much older projects that I would love to return to now I'm more experienced. And DMC4 SE is one of them. I say that there's not that many I want to return to right now, but DMC4 SE is definitely up on that list of games I would love to cover again and go through properly. I'd probably do the main campaign, which means I need to practice for Nero, which is, yeah. I'm not as awful as for Dante as I used to be. I'm still not brilliant by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not terrible. But my 4 Nero, I don't know. I know it's just because 5 spoiled me, but once you get used to 5 Nero, going back to 4 Nero just feels so clunky to me, and so I really struggle to play as him.
Leave it to me.
But at some point I might go back to that. But it'll probably be after I do a DMC5 playthrough, because DMC5 is more fresh, and it's the only game in the series I haven't covered. I feel like covering a game twice before I covered a sequel would be a bit questionable. And you see me pausing because I'm like, oh god damn it, another Gigas. But we're nearly at the end. I can see the door from here. I think we're like 3 or 4 fights away from the end. The boss fight at the end of this one should be nowhere near as much of a problem to you as the boss fight of the last one was. Like, the first floor's boss can be a real pain because of its extreme defense. This one is just fast. But just like earlier, is that this will be a boss fight that is from the first game. Like, where we fought the first boss of the first game as this floor's first boss. We're going to be fighting the spider boss, which is the one you fought in the water temple. So I think that's like the 4th or 5th? It's been a while since I played Dirk 1, alright? Like 4th or 5th boss fight. And then on the 3rd floor, to jump the gun, we're fighting the Heaven's Messenger. Which I was like, okay! When I saw that, like, I thought they weren't going to go to Heaven's Messenger straight away, but no, you fight Heaven's Messenger on floor 3. What would have been nice, and I'm going to like spoil it for you now that they don't do this, what would have been nice, just for old time's sake, if they threw in a Rapuka fight. If like the floor 4 or like floor 5, you just fought against Rapuka. That would be really cool, because this is based on the same engine, so they absolutely still have the assets of her moveset. Like, to just throw her in as like an extra obstacle, that would have been like a nice like wink to the people who played the first game. Because if you only played this one, you're not going to know who she is. But if you played the first one, you're like, hey, it's the main villain. It's that crazy blood psycho from the first game. Which I was really, well, I say really hoping, that's so exaggeration. I'm still kind of hopeful that they do more with her in the series. Like, I was hopeful that they would do more with her and they explain a bit more about what was going on with her in this game, because her DLC ending alluded to the fact that she kind of survived and was reborn more human and then wrote the song, which I still believe is inferring that the credit song is supposed to be her song. Which I don't have anything to back that up. That's entirely just my assumption on it, and I hope I made that clear at the time as well. I just like to think of it as that. I have nothing to back it up. But I was hopeful that they would explore her character more, or we'd meet a human version of her at some point. I say that, like, I wouldn't put it past this game to have like some magic twist that flips it around. I mean, they could just turn around the 3rd game and say, oh, but Mai is a human Rapuka. But I doubt it, because she seemed, the human Rapuka in that ending seemed more aware of her past life. Whilst if this is, like, assuming my joke theory was legit, assuming that was true, Mai would have brought it up at some point, because she would have known, or at least had like said something like, oh, something feels off about my past. But no, that never happened, so I'm pretty sure she isn't. Mai's just Mai, alright? But it does make me curious to see how Rapuka will come into it, if she even does in the last game of the trilogy. Assuming they only do 3. Like, they could, and I'm more than happy if they do this, carry this on for a while. They just keep on adding more twists and turns. Like, for me, my ideal party, because the 3rd game, I've said it before and I'm still pretty adamant on it, I think the 3rd game's protagonist is going to be Lydia. I don't think they're going to introduce a new main character. I think you'll be playing as Lydia predominantly, which is perfectly fine. And I also think it's going to be leaning a lot more back into the fantasy. Like, this was more the cursed town, but I think the 3rd game's going to dive a lot more into the fantasy element, which is alright, but as I've made no attempt to hide, I actually kind of preferred the more grounded approach this game had as a whole, compared to the fantasy setting of the last game. But maybe with the experience of having that game and this game under their belt, they'll do it a lot better and a lot more like unique in the next one, but we won't know until then. But if it can't obviously just be Lydia, personally, like I said, they might introduce 1 or 2 new characters to be playable, but I don't think they'll be main. I think, personally, they will have a party of 6 again, so like you can have 3 on and 3 off, and I think it will be a hodgepodge. I think they're going to have Mai and Rottie in that team, but they won't have Liliana because the ending implies that she'll end up being a partial antagonist. So I think they'll keep her like that. Maybe she'll be unlockable in post game, which would be sweet. But I think it'll be Lydia, Mai, and Rottie. So that's 3, and then I think it'll be Sheena. Maybe 1 more character from Dirk 1 just to make it a bit more even roster, and then maybe 1 new character. Or maybe they won't make it more of an even roster and only bring Sheena back so they can have 2 new characters instead. That's how I feel it'll be. Like, I think with that post-credit scene, with the almost definite new... Oh, actually, I need to talk about this little feature as well, because I only learned about this watching the speedrun. I never knew it existed until before that speedrun. There's zipping from enemies when I'm doing the menu instead of manually going over it. Pressing what I think it's right stick, and it will do it. It's either left stick or right stick. If you press in the stick, you'll make it so it'll just go into systematic pressing, so you can just cut over every enemy instead of having to manually move it over. But yeah, like the almost definite new main villain that was teased at the end of this game, like through the New Game Plus ending, I'm pretty sure that the Mai, Rottie, and Sheena are coming back in the next game are going to be central characters because he name drops them. And I feel like you wouldn't name drop characters if you weren't then going to do something with them. Maybe they won't be playable and they'll still be in the plot but just not playable, which I think would be a missed opportunity. And I know a lot of it's more just my bias because I love Dirk 2's cast. Like, I prefer Death End 2's cast over Death End 1. And by quite a stretch. And that's not to say Death End 1's cast is bad. Death End 1's cast I really enjoy and have such high praise for as a whole. But Death End 2 just has some of the best character writing I've ever experienced, in my opinion. I love the characters in this. I think all three of these main three are really beautiful souls that I want to see more of. And so it's more my bias of just wanting to see more of this team. Especially because I desperately want to just see more of Mai and Rottie's relationship now they're so much closer. Now they're a couple in the third game. I would love, love, love to see them just be a couple. And make them like cheeky small talk of like Rottie flirting and Mai just kind of going, yeah, alright, sort of thing, instead of her usual just trying to ignore it like she does in this game. Like, I'd love to just see them be a normal couple, just see them like hold hands, see them hug every now and then. Maybe if they're brave enough, have a kiss scene, because like Idea Factory seem to have this thing of avoiding kissing at all costs. Like, even in Dragon Star, it's because it was so low budget, they just could like have the two portraits shuffle close to each other, and then make them move away and call it a night. But they're always like hesitant to commit to it, and I'd love to see them to do that, because this game, for Compile Heart standards, has made strides in what they're prepared to acknowledge and talk about. Because there's always been like flirtatious girly subtext. Like, there's always been kind of gay subtext, but they've never committed to anything really before this game. And then this game has Victoria and Chitsuba, and then at the end of it, Rottie and Mai. Even if they kind of dance around the words, and it's more you have to look into the Japanese version of it before you to actually get some of the context and be like, oh no, they are talking to each other in loving ways. It's just when they adapted it to English, there was no real way of getting that across, so they just translated it more directly, even if the actual love of the words is sort of missing a little bit. But there's still a couple up sort of thing at the end of it. Like, the fact that they're more open and actually have gay couples, it's like, yes, come on, commit to it more. Have more of it in the third game, please. And I say this as someone who's forever optimistic that in the fifth mainline Neptunia game, if that ever happens, they'll actually do something with Neptune and Noir. Because it's been made very clear for all of it, Nep would happily be dating Noir. She's just waiting for Noir to admit she likes her back. And Noir does like Nep back, she just won't admit it because she's way too much of a tsundere. And that's the joke that they've been running for every single game and every single spin-off. That Nep does like Noir in that way and is just completely waiting for her to admit it first. But because Noir won't, nothing ever happens. So I'm hoping that if they can do more of it in this game, it will make them feel more confident to do it with their big franchise, like their biggest franchise, the Neptunia series. But this is the spider boss I was on about. Thankfully, no really creepy, weird, death end tied to it. Like, if you run away from this fight, you just run away from the fight, you know. Which is appreciated, because I did not like that death end in Death 1. Speaking of, I've mentioned it a few times, but because, you know, I've got to talk about something. Something that I did actually appreciate in this game was how much they toned down and simplified the process of getting death ends. In Death End 1, there was 28 death ends, I think, or something close to that mark, and it was kind of brutal to get them all. If you remember in that playthrough, there was a lot of them where you had to kind of dance to get them. It was like, enter a certain room so many times, start a boss fight and then run away from it, trigger a boss to spawn and then turn around, ditch Lily at the door of the castle. Like, it was a lot of really weird stuff that you wouldn't really think to do without a guide. Like, a couple of them you might stumble into. Like, I certainly stumbled into like a few of them at the time, but there's a lot that you just won't get. Whilst in this one there's only like 7 or 8, and all but one of them are obvious. The only one that isn't is the church. Like if you leave it burning, you miss out on a death end. If you decide to put it out, you can get a death end. Like that's the only one that I think is kind of like skew with. It's a bit questionable. But you see, this boss fight's getting ripped to shreds. The moment we corner it, it's like bouncing it off walls. This health bar will drop. Especially because it's got 1,000,000 health, but look how much damage we're doing per hit. And watch this wall bounce. As my throat starts dying. Okay, it didn't bounce that much that time, but we get more. Oh no, I'm not going to get a wall bounce off that pass. Yep, okay, I noticed. I was like, hang on a minute, there's no knockback on that. Where's the knockback on the star attacks? Like, I know she's weak. No, she's not weak to star. She's weak to moon, but she's got good moon skills, so she's got no excuse to not have good star skills. Come on, what's going on? And it's dead. It died then there, because it bounced off everyone and hit the wall when it was over. But I enjoyed the fact that it was more straight to the point, and I hope that they continue that in Death End 3, which I think they will, because I think they'll be a lot more focused on wrapping up the Trilogy's plot, so they won't want to worry about Death Ends as much. So I look forward to seeing how that plays out. But anyway, I gotta wrap this up. Next time on Death End Request 2, we'll be continuing the pain area with Floor 3, but until then, you guys take care now. Peace.